We call recovery a restorative, physiological, and psychological process that precedes a new stressor and prepares us for it. In the sports field, we pay a lot of attention to the quality of our training, but very little to the quality of our recovery. And precisely, one of the factors that most influences the quality of your training is recovery. Therefore, today we are going to see 5 factors that are affecting your recovery and how to remedy them. The consequences of inadequate recovery are multiple. The reduction in performance of whatever your sport is the most obvious. But let's not forget that training without recovery increases your risk of injury, of having a respiratory infection, worsens your mood, and alters your analytics. This, taken to the extreme, is what is known as overtraining syndrome, which we can study at another time. In other words, training without recovery is the abysmal difference between gaining health or losing it through physical exercise. Therefore, it's time to look at the 5 factors that most compromise your recovery. Insufficient deep sleep. Athletes who sleep less get injured more, but the total number of sleep hours is not the only important factor. During the night rest, in the hours you spend sleeping at night, when your body really makes the greatest efforts of cleaning and restoration, both physically and mentally, is during deep sleep. This phase, also called NREM3 or non-REM 3, is concentrated in the first 3 to 4 hours of sleep at night. During this slow-wave sleep, which accounts for no more than 10 to 20% of the total sleep time, there is a greater release of growth hormone. The immune system recovers, there is a brain cleaning process of waste products, and in general, the tissues that have been used during the day are recovered. How to increase your deep sleep? First, by eliminating what reduces it, mainly alcohol, chronic stress, and caffeine. In sensitive people, even a coffee at noon can reduce the relative proportion of deep sleep at night. Then, maintaining a stable sleep and wake schedule without many variations is key. Finally, and we will talk a lot about this in today's video, having a high sympathetic tone also reduces your deep sleep, and now I will explain what this is. Let's go with the second point, low carbohydrate diet. Carbohydrates help you recover. It's the most restorative macronutrient. And yes, I know a lot of people avoid them and don't want to eat them. Look, even though the amino acids from proteins make up the structural pieces that will end up repairing tissues, it's the metabolic environment created by carbohydrates that will make it easier for you to make the best use of those pieces. Remember that the insulin generated after their intake helps to get glucose and amino acids into the cells for their better use. In what specific ways do carbohydrates speed up your recovery? Do they speed up the recovery of glycogen stores, both muscular and hepatic? You'll find them familiar. This is one of the main factors affecting your performance in the next workout. If you compete or train at high intensity, this is even more true. It promotes muscle adaptation, strength gains, and growth. That is, you will get more out of your effort in the gym if you take them. It reduces the feeling of muscle fatigue and shortens recovery times. When there are double training sessions, such as morning and afternoon, it's crucial to take them immediately after the first session. How and how much to consume depends on your specific situation and sport. Simply being aware that just as protein is important for recovery, carbohydrates are also important, you have already gained a lot. I recommend that you focus your intake around the times of your workout, but especially afterwards. It's the time of day when your body is most sensitive to insulin, and your body is eager for energy to return you to homeostasis. What to consume? You might say it depends on the time you train. If you train before eating, as I usually do, then prioritize solid carbohydrate sources that you already know and that you would normally include in lunch. Tubers, cereals, legumes, or fruit. Alternating them will reduce monotony. Legume salad, cooked potato or sweet potato, rice, potato salad, fruit salad, etc. If you train early in the afternoon or morning and many hours will pass until you get to eat, then it is interesting to take a recovery shake in the post-workout. Although, of course, you can have a solid snack if you prefer, or a solid mid-morning. High friendly tone. Have they talked to you about muscle recovery, but have they ever talked to you about the recovery of your autonomic nervous system after exercise? Probably not. You know that this facet of your nervous system is responsible for coordinating stress and relaxation responses automatically. Thus, the autonomous nervous system's 2 branches, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, must act in equilibrium. In high-intensity exercise, the sympathetic nervous system, which prepares you to fight or flee, is strongly activated. Intense exercise is a powerful stressor and potential perceived threat, which is unsurprising. But the sympathetic is not a switch that has two positions, on and off, and that you can turn off and on so easily. It activates quickly but does not deactivate as fast. Imagine, rather, that your autonomic nervous system is a dial that has at one end the maximum sympathetic activation and at the other the maximum parasympathetic activation. When we repeatedly activate the sympathetic intensely without letting it recover, we achieve what we call sympathetic hypertonia or a high sympathetic tone. It would be the equivalent of unbalancing the dial to the right. This is an indicator of poor recovery, that you are not giving your nervous system time to recover between sessions. And obviously not only does training raise the sympathetic tone, work stress, family disputes, and lack of rest also do it. It's the reason why most of the population has that dial totally biased towards the sympathetic branch. And this is more important than you imagine. How do I suspect that I have a high sympathetic tone? Well, there are behavioral aspects you can pay attention to if you want. You'll be more irritable, tired, reactive, and anxious. What we know as being stressed, basically. However, there are also objective, non-invasive, cheap, and easy-to-apply methods to know if you have an excessively high sympathetic tone. For example, heart rate variability. A lower heart rate variability compared to your baseline implies that you are still in the process of recovery, just like other even simpler parameters such as a resting heart rate higher than usual. There are many solutions to this fascinating topic which I won't dwell on. All of them raise the parasympathetic tone. The first and most natural is to give your body the rest it needs, which for high-intensity workouts is usually more than 24 hours. However, aerobic exercise at moderate intensities has the opposite recuperative effect. Diaphragmatic breathing techniques can increase vagal tone, as can meditation and exposure to cold. Post-workout cold, this point will not compromise your recovery, but as far as muscle recovery is concerned, it is totally overrated. Look, I have nothing against cold exposure, and personally I love doing it. In fact, it has specific benefits like the one I just told you about, and it can have an analgesic effect and greatly improve your mood. But I illustrate to you with this study why it's overrated. In it, 30 men completed an exercise protocol and were then assigned to 2 interventions. Actually 3, immersion in cold water at 11 degrees, immersion in hot water at 41 degrees, or a controlled hot bath at 36 degrees. The result is that those who received hot water recovered more quickly than those who were immersed in cold water. The simplest way to apply this in practice is to use the sauna or the Turkish bath, which also improve recovery after demanding workouts. The sauna or infrared sauna has positive effects on muscle recovery, and its frequent use even improves metabolic health parameters. On the other hand, it has an ergogenic effect, that is, it improves performance, especially in endurance sports. In the end, it is a cardiovascular stressor, and you can check this yourself by measuring your heart rate when you've been in the sauna at 80 degrees for 5 or 10 minutes. While not equivalent to running, it provides a powerful and unique cardiovascular stimulus, particularly for those reluctant to exercise. From a physiological point of view, the powerful vasodilation produced, cleaning of waste products in the muscle, and correct supply of amino acids and nutrients justify this recuperative power of heat compared to cold. A lot of mental load. The extracurricular demands that bring worries, responsibilities, and expectations from oneself and others also affect physical recovery. Just as positive psychological factors such as concentration, motivation, and the will to win affect performance in a negative way, any mental load you carry affects it. Your physical performance, but also your recovery. Why? Well, because stress, whether it's physical from a high-intensity session or psychological from an argument with your wife, activates the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. This sympathetic state is characterized by a sustained release of stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline, both with catabolic effects that interfere with muscle protein synthesis and delay tissue recovery. Not only that, very exacerbated psychological stress can even induce a systemic inflammatory response commanded by cytokines such as interleukin-6 or tumor necrosis factor alpha. And finally, mental loads affect the amount of deep sleep you get, which, as you know, directly impacts recovery. At the same time, sleeping poorly increases the sympathetic tone, which, as you already know, further reduces recovery. This is the most difficult variable to manage of all. But if you're going through a tough time, remember that reducing the volume and intensity of your training won't make you progress less but more. Now you have more tools to optimize your recovery and take your performance to another level. I inform you that at Perform Institute, we are going to launch an extensive and deep training on recovery and injury prevention.